Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Today, we will discuss a module on Kevin Gilbert's The Cherry Pickers. This module is written by Dr. Pinky Isha, Assistant Professor English, Rabindra Bharati University. Background to Aboriginal Australian drama. We would like to discuss the context of Aboriginal Australian drama in the very beginning, and then gradually we will discuss about Kevin Gilbert and the play The Cherry Pickers. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander drama holds an important place in Australian literature. These texts are unique documents insofar as their cultural and social legacy is concerned. Hundreds of productions over the last 5 decades have created a voluminous area of creative and literary works that have never belied the original Australian sensibility. Tracing it to its very roots, many writers have toured Australia extensively while also going global. Writers like Jane Harrison in Stolen 1997, Andrea James in Yanagai 2003, and Tammy Anderson in I Don't Want to Play House 2000 have been in continuous production for about a decade. Contemporary Australian theatre today is both for indigenous audiences as well as for mainstream foreign clientele who could be non-indigenous or indigenous. At the leading edge of contemporary performing arts scenario, Australian theatre is dominated by arts, music and stories, dances and traditional songs, and plays by its leading voices. The first plays by indigenous Australian playwrights to be commercially viable were those concerned with issues of survival. Merritt and Bostock presented a range of context and problems confronting indigenous Australians, and Gilbert play The Cherry Pickers 1968 was the first indigenous play to have mainstream audiences. The text presented non-indigenous Australians speaking the first example of Aboriginal English as the standard language, which was rather unconventional at that time. Merritt's The Cake Man was the next play to create a flutter on stage during its first performance in 1975. Gilbert and Merritt belong to the Wiradjuri tribe and Bostock. His play Here Comes the Nigger 1976 from among the Bunzalung tribe all reflect the reality and humanity of modern Aboriginal life. Writings of this groundbreaking dramatist were followed by a range of plays focusing on perceptively every aspect of indigenous life and history. In the 1980s, Bob Mazza from Murray Island in the Torres Strait first playfully brought to light the excruciating struggle of the people in order to retain their land. This is done in an unassuming manner through a performance text, Meriki 1986. His next play, The Keepers, fuses a mix of naturalism and non-naturalism to foreshadow the destruction of Boondik people in South Australia. In Western Australia, Noongar writers such as Jack Davies wrote about Aboriginal life and history, mingling the physical and visual traditional practices of the people. Past is often represented as a dancer who metaphorically and literally links the past with the now and the here. Visual practices among the Aborigines, which had started to dwindle out with modern technology and civilization, can therefore be recreated with establishing a link with the past. As in the play The Dreamers 1982, which tells the tale of the Walich family, in which a didgeridoo dancer moving to the sound of music links the past with the present. In Kulurk 1979, behind the chronicling of history is the giant visual image of the giant or Wargul, a rainbow serpent, that is believed to be the deity and creator spirit of the people of Western Australia. This visual image is therefore a potent aboriginal marker and a great reminder that the past cannot be ousted by the present, no matter what. In Jimmy Chee's Brand New Day 1990, the story is of a young Aboriginal man's journey across Western Australia, which becomes a quest for identity and security. Indigenous women writers have also demonstrated a breadth of different approaches in their work. Names of reckon with are Eva Johnson, a member of the Mulak Mulak people, who in plays such as Zindarella, Muras, Mimini's Voices, and What Do They Call Me writes about the indigenous subject discrimination at the hand of colonial masters. She wrote plays throughout the 1980s and 90s. A recurring theme in most of her works is also the impact of governmental policies on women and children. Another indigenous writer from the Muruwari people, Jane Harrison, draws upon the past and present and the gradual transformation of indigenous people down the ages. Rainbow's End and Stolen were inspired by various facets of Aboriginal life, like the establishment of the Rumbalara, the Aboriginal housing estate at Murupna. Kathy Craig's Muri Love focuses on the joys and tensions of friendship and relationships. One of the most powerful and abiding voices to have emerged from the last decade is that of Dallas Winmar from Western Australia, who in works like Aliwa and Ibiyung expresses the struggles of Aboriginal people labeled as half caste. Ibiyung is based upon her grandfather's life under the Protection Acts. In recent years, the frames of referencing in Aboriginal writing has extended leaps and bounds and proliferated in different directions. The quest for an authentic Australian cultural identity found its penchant in the country's demand for literary movement, like the Jinda Orobak movement, founded by Rex Ingamels in 1937 to 1938. In order to express a distinctive Australian quality in literature and to release Australian art and literature from the influx of British and other European influences that have so long restricted its true blossoming. A feature of this movement was to turn away from extraneous features and derive inspiration and aesthetic favor from the cascade of Aboriginal legends and languages, of most importantly from the landscape itself. Many writers of the period turned to Aboriginal legends and tried to connect contemporary culture with it as the only way to validate their own roots and existence. The work of Mary Durack, while labeled paternalistic, hints at this essential legitimizing of Aboriginal culture while pointing out its distinctive features. Pritchard's controversial novel Cunardo 1929, sometimes dismissed by critics as reductive and essentialist in its portrait of the Aboriginal female protagonist, is a shameful critique of the white Europeans' idea of the native Aboriginal community and explores the divide between the literary self-representation of Australia and the social and cultural dimensions of this great continent, if it is to be attested by the writers only. Now, let us have a brief discussion and brief introduction about the playwright Kevin Gilbert. Kevin Gilbert was born in Condobolin in NSW to an Irish father and part Aboriginal mother who died when he was just 7. Kevin Gilbert was brought up in a welfare home at the initial phase of his life and later on by relatives. After a limited education, he worked through his teens as a laborer, married early, had 2 sons, but suffered a blotch in his career when found guilty of murdering his wife after a domestic argument and was subject to life imprisonment. It was in the prison that he first cultivated a talent for art and literature and developed a love for lino carts and painting. His works from the prison was exhibited in 1970 by the Australian Council for the Arts. In 1971, after 14 years in prison, Gilbert's play The Cherry Pickers, dealing with the story of Aboriginal seasonal workers, was staged in Sydney while he was still in prison. This event in 1971 earned Gilbert the reputation of being the first Aboriginal playwright to have a play performed in Australia. In 1972, he became associated with the Purfleet Aboriginal Reserve near Taree, NSW, where he initiated community aid projects and worked as a community developer. He also established the Kalari Aboriginal Art Gallery, a milestone in the training of young Aboriginal artists. It did not take long for Gilbert to be associated in the wider cause for the rights of Aboriginals. He started editing periodicals such as Alchuringa and Black Australian News. Gilbert also brought the Australian government to task and demanded for a national inquiry into Aboriginal education and began working wholeheartedly for the functioning and implementation of a centre for continuing research into Aboriginal affairs at Monash University, Melbourne. In addition to the Cherry Pickers, Gilbert also published two volumes of poetry, End of Dreamtime 1971 and People Are Legends 1978. Gilbert's poetry rages in protest against society when they look down upon the native blacks in poems such as People Are Legends and Cock Robin. The indifferent treatment of the blacks is mirrored in poems such as Trying to Save Joan Ella and in Gummy Jack, his own degradation and hopelessness as a member of the Aboriginal kind. Gilbert also vehemently protested against the seizure of being seizure of property of the natives and voices this with great conviction in land claims. And the tragedy of being born as the aboriginal in inhabitants of the third world. His contentious poem To My Cousin Yvonne Nekale in the Bulletin 30th September 1980 attacks what he sees as a lack of involvement in aboriginal problems. One of Gilbert's noteworthy political tracts on land rights is the famous Because a White Man Will Never Do It 1973, which argues in favor of restoring not only the land to the evicted natives but also their dignity and self-esteem which had been brutally and painfully robbed from them. In Living Black, Gilbert attempts to give a first-hand record of what it means to be an Aboriginal. This he skillfully does through interview dialogues with all kinds of Aborigines, urban reserve, tribal and fringe dwellers. He proposes a program of physical and cultural compensation for centuries of sabotage and mayhem, almost 200 years that have been enormously successful in wiping out the consciousness of this very ancient and meaningful race and their legacy. So this is the very brief about the playwright, the author, and his contribution in the context of indigenous Aboriginal right and their protest against the fighting voice against the imperialist or the colonizers. Now let us focus on the play text. The Cherry Pickers. The history of Aboriginal playwriting receives the first major kind of a compendious boost with Gilbert's historic chronicling of Australia's indigenous legacy. The theft of the country and its subsequent effects on the minds of those who resist it with stoic calm and a resilience of spirit that is unthinkably heroic. Written in 1968, when Gilbert was serving a 14-year prison sentence, the text is not at all cynical or acerbic as one might conjecture, but has the familiar, rather sympathetic tone of a sensitive bystander. Gilbert, by nature, believed in the positive influences of reconstruction and never had a reprimanding tone in this work. This drama is a deeply philosophical piece which attempts to build bridges between the native tradition and the contemporaneity of modern life. In the worst of situation, man has to keep his calm, and Gilbert often prophetically prophesied, "You sharpen your axe on the hardest stone." This play, in specific, has little adherence to logic in the sense that the play is a collage of creation, myths, raw limericks, tribal rituals intermixed with political oratory and a rich lore of tribal songs. The spirit of the play seems to be a kind of hanging on that is indeed one of its special features. The play revolves around a ground of indigenous Australians who, like nomads, are forced to roam the margins of their own continent in search of whatever work they can find. They eventually wait in ardent anticipation for the cherry picking season to arrive. Cherry picking being a work that fetches good money with the promise of arrival of Jonolo, a talismanic supramundane figure who might bring a change of fortune. In the meantime, while they await such bliss, they while away the time with singing songs and telling stories. Their play also offers a sadly resilient picture of the aborigine, for whom hardship is a way of life. When the cold August, with its cruel cold winds, give way to the blissful certainty of the sun in spring, people emerge from their ramshackled, leaky shanties, some from old discarded cars or dark crevices of the landscape, to gather a few of their dirty soiled bundles and get them together for traveling to the promised land of cherry picking. Hundreds and hundreds of them would stagger up to go, some in their bicycles half disbalanced with crazy bundles that would risk falling over. Some would catch hold of old tattered caravans drawn by horses, and a third category who could ill afford even a bicycle or a caravan would plod along laboriously beside those caravans, moving slowly up steep and sometimes even sand hills of the Malay country. Some of the more daring of the lot would jump the rattler. The slow steam train that trailed with an even motion across the continent. The essence of the cherry picking season was not only a momentary release from starvation to livelihood. It was a sense of renewal of lives, of the idea of being reborn every year for that season. A new kind of christening in relationship, among friends, among lovers, and once again nursing and propensity to live to love. Starving children who had never known the bounties of play and crumbs would now have recourse to toys and dolls for Christmas. The season, metaphorically and literally, also meant a temporary respite from the local police and white station managers who meted out worse treatment to these poor Australians from the Aboriginal reserves. Gilbert portrays this all through a story that is mostly conversation between people and reveals snippets of life rather than a complete storyline. There is a wonderful sense of humor, often callow humor in a few places, but mostly it rejoices and bourgeons with the hope of a new life. In many other works like Me and Mary Kangaroo, childhood of the Aboriginal native in a pristine landscape is depicted. And in Living Black, Gilbert documents how Australia underwent a rape of the soul, of the mind and the body in ways so deeply devastating and on such a unprecedented scale that the memory of the heart becomes a part of its identity or legacy itself. The diversities of the bush life, along with the joys and sorrows of its attendant circumstances, find stunning expression in Gilbert's poetry collection, Child's Dreaming and Me and Mary Kangaroo. In other poetry collections like The Black Side, People Are Legends and other poems, and Black from the Edge, and in writings like Because a White Man Will Never Do It, the Aboriginal and white struggle of hate and destruction comes out, albeit in a serious vein. Here, in the cherry picker's life seems to be asking for its rewards, even if it is albeit temporary, and this infuses the text with its essential flavor. There is in the cherry pickers a conscious idea of sovereignty, of wanting to break free from the colonial yoke. This is a beautifully crafted play in which dialogue attains a rich mix of realism and the metaphysical. The characters are engaging and their dramatic conflicts gripping. Gilbert was the first man in Australia who vied for having the play performed by an all Australian Aboriginal cast, where voices spoke not extraneously but from their own depths. It was also a play that saw among its audiences not only black Australians but also the white colonial masters. So it spoke to mainstream audiences and elicited a miraculous response. Now, let us conclude our discussion. Being a seminal play in Australia's theatre history in 1968, Gilbert's reputation for the stage was established and profoundly praised apart from being an outstanding poet, artist, and philosopher. Because Gilbert refused to license the piece for production until it could be performed by an all Aboriginal troupe, which did not occur until after his death in 1993. It was actually a big success when it was performed in Sydney Theatre Company, one of the world's great ensembles, where the Aboriginal cast that he actually devised to move quite effortlessly between serious rhetoric and scabrous humor in an instance. The play gives the feel of recreating life around a campfire, even when one is consciously aware of being in a theatre, and that is one of the quintessential aspects of the play, and it continues to be the abiding feature of the play even to this day. In this module, we have discussed about the play and the playwright and the context, which context this play has been emerged, and how this play has truly depicted the Aboriginal life and their strong voices against the oppression of the British colonizers and the imperialists, and how British colonizers and imperialists oppressed them oppressed their mind, their body, their land, and their nature, and how the British colonizers have tried to made them separated from the land and the nature. And this actually a vivid picture of the community life, community struggle, and the playwright successfully represented the community life and their struggle, the vivid true picture of the community life through this play. And the playwright becomes a voice of the community, a symbol of a voice of the community through this play. And it is quite interesting that he wanted to the play to be performed by the indigenous group, by all the actors and actresses of indigenous group. And this is how it can be proved, it is shown that how much the playwright felt about the community, and how much deeply the playwright was rooted within the psyche of the community. I mean, the playwright's psyche was so much so much filled with the sympathy towards the community, and the playwright becomes the voice for the community through this remarkable play. So for further reading, you can consult the further reading list and the reference section, and for the self-assessment, you can see the self-assessment folder provided here. Thank you.